everyone, and welcome to the Babies in Common show. I'm Jeanette.
And I'm Melissa. Welcome, listeners. Please note that any information shared during the show is not to be taken as medical advice. Please consult your own care providers for questions about you or your baby's health and visit babiesincommon.com/disclaimer to read more.
A quick note before we start the show. As of today, our Stop Separating Birthing Families in Massachusetts petition has 1,091 signatures. Thanks to everybody who signed and shared. And if you're just hearing about this now, Melissa and I recently discovered that some Massachusetts hospitals are routinely separating a pregnant person from their only support for labor triage, extended antepartum monitoring, and even some types of labor induction. Most of the hospitals are not doing this in our state. They're not enforcing these harmful policies, but there are some really big hospitals that are, and it's a violation of a birthing person's human rights. So we want to ask Governor Baker, and we hope we don't have to take it that far, but we're really trying to get the hospitals to be compelled to change this awful policy. And so if you can help by signing and sharing, and if you know anybody, let us know. But we want this harmful practices to stop so people can stay with their support person of choice. So please visit babiesincommon.com and watch our video, read the petition, and sign and share. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to everybody who has already done those things. Now on to our show. Today is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. And our guest today is a local nurse, home birth mom, and friend to us both, Alicia Randall. So Alicia grew up an Army brat, moving often and living primarily living primarily in Texas, Illinois, and Leominster. After high school in 2001, she enlisted in the military, where she served as a 68W LPN combat medic for the United States Army, providing medical treatment for wounded soldiers during 2 Iraq tours in 2006 and 2010. She met her husband, also a veteran, while serving in the Army in Iraq, and they married in 2009. After her enlistment was complete, she enrolled in college and earned her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Fitchburg State University in 2016. And Alicia is currently enjoying civilian life in Central Mass with her husband and 3 amazing, gorgeous, beautiful daughters. They're like so adorable. They all look exactly the same. I just love them. I love all your pictures. And she works as an RN at a local hospital as a float pool nurse on the telemetry and med-surg floors. Her first 2 daughters were born at a hospital, and her 3rd daughter was born at home with the midwives of Embrace Midwifery, which is how I met Alicia, as I was her postpartum home birth visiting nurse. Alicia is here with us today to tell us all about her trials, tribulations, and triumphs with her 3rd daughter's breastfeeding journey. Because as we are going to learn, even if the first 2 times go relatively smoothly, that does not guarantee a smooth number 3. So we are calling today's episode the 3rd Baby Breastfeeding Curveball. Welcome to our show, Alicia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I have a question, Army Brat, of myself. I don't know what's a 68W.
So a 68 whiskey is the code for combat medic, and the identifier, which is like an extra job, is called Mike 6, and that would be the LPN part of it. So when the invasion kind of started, after we started having some larger deployments, they decided that it would be better to have medical people, instead of just be separate like medics and nurses. You have a bigger pool of labor if you have all the nurses be medics as well, and then you can like decide who goes where depending on what the need was. So it was more versatile.
Wow.
A medic and a nurse. Yeah.
Thank you again for all of your service. I know that I speak for both of us and many of our listeners, and I'm sure you have an incredible story to tell about your career as an Army nurse. I feel like we should, once this pandemic is over, go out for some drinks and trade some shop stories, because there's no doubt that you have touched many lives and all over the world. So thank you for your service. Let's start from the beginning, though, with your breastfeeding journey. Can you briefly tell us about your first daughter's birth experience and your breastfeeding journey with her? What were your plans for feeding your daughter, and when you were pregnant?
So briefly, I will tell you.
As first labors are never brief.
I'll make the story brief. It lasted a year long. Well, I think there was a lot of different factors in my pregnancy, I would say, because we got home from our second deployment. I became pregnant instantly. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, immediately. And I think I saw Dustin for the first time and was pregnant. And so we were living in Texas pre-deployment, and we decided to move back up here. And so we moved up here. So there was a move involved, there was a deployment, there was adjusting back to normal life, there was hormones from pregnancy. We moved into a house that we still rent from my dad. And we didn't have furniture and we didn't have jobs, and it was like so stressful. And
Wow.
you're first time parent, you have no idea what you're doing.
Mm.
And like it was the same year Blockbuster went out of business. The world was crazy.
The world was in turmoil.
It was wild. So I like had no idea what I was doing, but I had Facebook. So I tried my best, and I did learn, and I've always wanted to breastfeed because I want my baby to have like what's free, which was economically very important,
Yeah.
as well as like I feel like I had the foundational knowledge of the antibodies and all the benefits of breastfeeding. So I was like, this is going to happen, this is what we're doing. And I also had a very close friend, my best friend, who I was actually my best friend from middle school and high school. And she had a daughter who was exactly 9 months older than my oldest. So she was a huge breastfeeding advocate, like helped me in so many ways.
That
So
peer-to-peer support is so important.
it was really the only thing that, like, I don't know, but anyways, long story short, after that intro, she so after we had Leia, we had tons of trouble. It turns out that she had a posterior tongue tie and a very like a class 3, I don't know the classes, a very severe lip tie. She would refuse bottles. We had so many of every kind. I was still in the reserves at the time, so my husband had to use like a syringe, like squirt milk in her mouth while I was at drill. It was like she would not eat. She did not eat for 16 hours straight. I mean, we had her like PD.
Because the military doesn't care. Like they're like, no, you have to work. I don't care if your kid won't eat. Like your job is to be here. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I was lucky to be like I was currently like at that time I was a platoon sergeant in a hospital unit, so they were a little nicer, I think, than maybe another unit, and they did let me come home because I was supposed to sleep over, but it was like a full 16 hours that I was gone. And she, like, her pediatrician like kept saying, well, baby will eat when they're hungry, they'll eat when they're hungry.
Oh geez.
But, like, she was hungry.
Yeah.
She was not eating.
Yeah.
So super stressful. We didn't find out until she was like in early intervention, had like speech delays. She could not handle solids at all. So we found out my friend Patty, again, who was like always helping me with breastfeeding. She was like, I think this sounds like you. And she sent me like a little info meme of like, these are the side effects of ties. And that was, and we ended up going to Dr. Cutlow in Albany, who offered like a really, really dope military discount, which I super appreciate. And we had her tie revised, and she approved like within weeks. So I was like nursing her, like no kidding, for like 7 hours straight. Nobody cared because.
And how old was she when you had that done?
She was 15 months when she finally had it revised.
Yeah.
Wow.
Released.
Really.
Don't revise.
So you
our children.
struggled that for that long with breastfeeding her the first time?
Yes.
Like, were you in pain? Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I had like mastitis, like I had antibiotics at least 3 times. I had countless blocks. I had all the symptoms, thrush, like, oh, it was awful.
Oh my
We
gosh.
did it.
You
like,
are a survivor.
What
in 1,000 different ways.
What do you feel like kept you going?
Well, keeping my baby alive was helpful. She did not take a bottle, so there was like really no other option. I mean, the syringe definitely didn't work. We tried like a little medicine cup, like, and we just had no idea what we were doing. So, I mean, she did nurse, but it was like, I've told people this is a terrible analogy, but it's like a hamster, like the little feeding bottles. You
Yeah.
just right up and they just take a little bit. That's exactly what she was doing. She was just getting a tiny bit at a time. She slept like garbage because she was hungry, and it would have, like, honestly, and I think, and that's why I'm such an alarmist about ties, because if we knew and we had it released, then our whole first year would have been completely different.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Oh man. So you are pregnant with number 2, and do you know this might happen with the second one? Like, did you make any changes? Like, how did you prepare for birth and postpartum and breastfeeding? Anything different that you did the second time around?
Oh yeah, big time. I was ready. I was like, well, I know better. My Juliet, my second baby, was all like, this, I didn't get to do this the first time. Kind of, I'm gonna do it right this time. So so I, for the birth, I got a doula.
Nice.
I had for Leia, for her birth, I did get an epidural, which I think was wonderful, but I got it at 10 centimeters,
Oh
which
gosh.
I
Yeah.
slightly regretted. I was like, I could have just started pushing.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm glad that they had a lovely birth, but at the same time, that was like a decision made out of fear of having it.
Sure. Yeah. And it is very hard to sit for an epidural at that stage, I'll
Yes.
tell you.
I don't know why I do the things I do, but I was like, yes, I'll take it now. So for Juliet, I was like, oh, I'm definitely like, I'm gonna try out natural this time, and I'm gonna make sure I'm prepared. I did hypnobirthing classes.
Mhm.
I got this really amazing doula. She's amazing and wonderful, and I had this beautiful, wonderful hospital intervention-free birth with like low lights and
Aw,
weird music, and it was
I
amazing.
love it.
that's
Good.
awesome. That's good.
And she had her ties the same exact ones, and because she had like the little lizard tongue and everything,
Mhm.
and she had them released day one, no issues. And I was like, I wish I knew the first time.
So day 1 meaning in the hospital?
In the hospital, yeah, she was
Okay.
born, and then they took her, and then they cut them.
And it worked.
Yeah, and it worked.
Yeah. Well, as I always say, I don't see all the babies, but I definitely see babies who have had their tongues released a little bit in the hospital, but not enough. So it's not always done well.
But
Oh,
for you, it seemed
Yeah,
like
it worked for you.
it worked. And
Yeah.
so you're like, okay,
Good.
right.
this is the cure all. It must be just this easy. I'm assuming that's what I would think. I'd be like,
Yes.
wow,
Yeah.
So breastfeeding her, how long did you breastfeed Juliet? Which, by the way, I love your daughter's names.
Mhm.
I like them too. Juliet's my favorite name, though. All
I
my children the same. But
don't have favorites, but Juliet's my favorite. No. It's the dirty little secret all parents have. No.
find this.
But you nursed Leia for 3 years
For 3 years, yeah.
and Juliet for how long?
And until I would say like maybe two and some change, because I was pregnant and not in the mood anymore. So
Mhm.
she weaned amazingly. She
Yeah.
weaned straight to salsa water. I was like, okay.
She's like, I want a Perrier if I'm not gonna have the
At
breast
2
anymore.
at over 2, just to clarify for anybody
Yeah,
listening.
exactly.
She was not younger than 1.
Well, I bribed my 3-year-old
awesome.
to wean with eggnog, so I
That's
say whatever
right.
works. Whatever
That's
works.
right.
Well, that's
That's
more
right.
of a understandable transition.
The bubbles.
So tell
Hmm.
us about your birth experience with your third daughter. You seem to have had in your words, lovely intervention-free, supportive hospital birth, natural birth experience that you wanted at the hospital. So, but you chose home birth for your third. So, could you tell us a little bit about why you made that choice and what your birth experience was like? And did you like tell anybody? Like, I mean, you're a nurse, and I get this question a lot too as a nurse. I had a home birth, like, did you tell your coworkers, like, stuff like that?
Yep. So I was definitely also a fear-based decision to step into a home birth in the heat of the pandemic at 33 weeks, I think I was, when I switched over to embrace midwifery. And I was so glad that they took me. She's like, I think it's getting a little late. You got to make a decision. And I was like, do you have an opening? I think, everything is risk versus benefit. And at that time, in the beginning of the pandemic, everything was unknown and very scary. And as much as I would have loved to have a home birth from the start, it's very expensive. So I was not, like, it's like $250 compared to like $5,500. Like, and you have to be like, well, I like that, but I'm not sure if it's worth, like a 2006 Saturn Ion quad coupe, like you gotta.
That's what you think of it. Well, I don't know. I think you get a whole lot more loving from the midwifery team than you do from the car.
Yeah, that's true. They carried me just as far.
I don't know this side of you, Alicia. I only know you when you're struggling. I'm loving this.
It's a mess, Jeanette. So, that's why that was tough.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, okay. But
so did you tell your coworkers? That was the question.
My coworkers, yes, no, they pushed me into it. I had like some really good friends at work that they're like, I think it's what's safest for you because you don't want to be here. At that time, they were definitely like, there was no protocol for separation, which I love, and I signed, your petition because I completely agree. And that's not something I'm willing to be, traumatized for, is have my baby ripped away from me. My husband, he kept saying, he's like, well, they can't do that. And I was like, they can do whatever they want. Like, like if you're in birth, you don't have the, like, will I have the capacity to stand up for myself? Like the doula I paid for, like, she can't even come in, like there's nobody, like, I'm sure my husband will speak up for me, but at the same time, like, I was just picturing the worst of worst scenarios, and that was enough to be like motivated, I think, economically, and with the support of my family who pitched in, and my dad and my stepmom like helped out.
Nice.
And because they also supported that the safest thing would be to be from home. I live probably a minute and a half from the hospital.
Oh.
My husband's a firefighter, so he was confident, I guess.
I can catch that baby if we need to.
He almost had to.
Like, honestly, I think that, like, if I didn't have a home birth, I probably would have been unattended in my kitchen because that baby came out. Like, I really think I probably would have just had her home anyway. So I'm glad that we planned for it.
Yeah. But doesn't your husband get like some sort of like little pin if he catches a baby as part of the firefighter?
Is that true?
I don't know.
He said I want my stork pin. I was like,
oh yeah. I think it's firefighters and ambulance and paramedics folks get them.
Oh, that's so funny. I want a stork pin too.
Right? You're the one that did the work. So how was her birth?
Oh,
sounds like it was fast.
It was fast. It was funny because I feel like I was laboring for a while, and then it was like a Wednesday, I think, and then it was a Wednesday night. The sun was in the east direction. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. A lot of this is verbal diarrhea because I don't talk to adults except. I'm like, wow, you're listening, you're not screaming at me.
And at work, you have to wear a mask, and you're not allowed to like stay in patients' rooms very long.
Right. And then nobody wants to talk because they're all grumpy anyways. They're like,
yeah,
exactly.
Sorry, so I digress.
Yeah.
So I was laboring. I was like, okay, this is happening today. We send the girls to my dad's house. My dad and my stepmom live in town. And Juliet is 3. Like, no, she's not 3 yet. Yeah. So she's 2 and almost 3, and she's never slept over anywhere. So I start, like, my contractions are like picking up. I'm listening to audio tracks. I'm like, ooh, I'm so good at this. I'm good at being in labor. Like, trying to pump myself up. I'm like, yes. And then all of a sudden, like, my contraction starts to go further and further apart. 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, And I'm like, all right. So I talked to my doula, Teresa, who's amazing. And she's like, well, do you want to have a baby tonight? Because I can help you get there. Like she was going to have me pull out the pump and I was like, no, I'd rather go to sleep. She's like, I think that's a great idea. So Juliet was at my dad's house. She was screaming, she was crying, she wanted to come home. I was like, bring her home. Like we live in town. It's no big deal. So I cuddled up next to my Juliet and fell asleep, and I'd have a contraction and then go back to sleep and have a contraction. And about like 3 o'clock in the morning, I like feel like I have a contraction and I like literally feel a pop. I feel like it was like a cartoon, like in the words pop came out, like in a bubble, like pop. And my water broke, and it was like so much water. Like I was on the edge of polyhydramnios, the verge during my pregnancy. So I picked up Julia, I like pulled her around. I was like, he like swoops downstairs and grabs her and like puts her in front of the TV. And I think something about standing and cleaning up, and I called everybody and in the shower to clean up. I think she just dropped down. And then I think it was like 2 hours maybe from when my water broke to when I had her, but it felt like 10 minutes. I got in the birthing tub, and that was my dream. And but there was no water in the birthing tub. And the water took forever to fill up.
No.
So the water wasn't like touching my butt. And I was so mad. I was like, make the water come faster, please. And so Dustin's in the kitchen with pots of water like warming up. And my friend Patty, who does Birch Moon Mama placental encapsulation.
Oh, nice.
She did it for me as my friends as a gift, and she came in after the birth, and she said that she saw the towels and the pots of water, and she was like, "What happened here? What's this, like 1850?
Right? Get the towels, water, boiling water.
This is not what you said." But and I pushed her in the tub. The tub was eventually full of water by the time she came out.
Okay, good.
Which was delightful. And
you got your dream.
Yeah. It was my dream. It wasn't angelic. There was like a lot more poop than I thought would be involved.
That happens.
But it was really nice, and I'm very grateful for having that experience. My husband set up this whole postpartum room. It was our guest room. And we bought like a twin bed. We had like a bassinet, like the rocking chair, like the birth pool was in there. It was like I lived in that room for a full 4 months, like before and after. It was amazing.
I do remember that room set up. I remember actually like commenting like, wow, you got a sweet setup here. Because, we tell people after their home birth, like, we don't want you to leave whatever room they're in, whatever bed they're in. We don't want you to leave this room really for at least the first week. And, because we don't want you walking up and downstairs. We don't want you, in the thick of the family drama, trying to manage all the other kids. We want you kind of secluded away in whatever part of your house that can be in. And for some people that's their bedroom, but for some people it is a converted guest room that is near the bathroom and that they can, can hide out in. So
yeah.
So you have the baby, you get cleaned up, I'm assuming, all tucked in. How did those first couple nights of breastfeeding go for you?
I thought they were going okay, except she wouldn't gain weight. I'm like, I feel like we're doing everything right. I think getting her to latch was a lot harder than I remember Juliet, but I was always like battling with, is this not like something I remembered, or is this how it actually was? It actually is harder. It's more difficult. Yeah, I thought it felt fine. It felt like I was doing it right.
So Melissa came day 3, and was she not gaining weight, or had she lost a lot of weight by day 3?
I think she did lose some change, because then Melissa helped me set up my pump.
Yes. So this is like one of my very first postpartum appointments with Embrace Midwifery. And of course, like before the taping of the show started, Alicia and I were talking about how, I was a total hot mess because like I forgot half my stuff and I had to drag it out. And she's like, I don't remember that at all. And I'm like, oh, sweet. But because, yeah, like I'm just trying to get into a routine of like, remembering everything that I've got to do and trying to be personable, and we're very new to like wearing masks and not being able to like be affectionate with people in our appointments and get close to people. So I'm like sitting on the other side of the room with my mask on, trying to like do my assessments and stuff. And so we got to chatting, and she's a nurse and I'm a nurse, so we were talking shop and talking about her and her recovery, and everything's going perfect. Baby's exam perfect. And then like right before I'm ready to leave, I like weigh her because like, oh god, I gotta weigh the baby.
Right.
And I weigh her and I'm like I was like, oh, okay. So in my head I'm like, shit. Like the baby lost like way more weight than normally we see in home birth, right? Because in the hospital, it's fairly common for babies to lose 5-6%.
She lost a
in the
pound.
first couple of days. Yeah. Because moms get epidurals, they get bags and bags of IV fluids. They have C-sections with bags and bags of IV fluids. And a lot of that first, a couple days of weight loss is a lot of extra fluid. But we know Alicia's birth story, she didn't have IV fluids. And so the baby wasn't very big to begin with. Do you remember how big she was?
She was
Alicia?
8'8".
Oh, okay. So I'm thinking wrong. So 8'8" is pretty good, but she lost like a whole pound in like 3 days. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like that's, what's going on here. So now I'm like, okay, we've got to like backtrack. So I'm like, we got to get some milk into this baby. And you had told me right off the bat, like, oh, she's got ties. My midwife had already helped me, figure that out. And my others had ties, and I'm going to get them released. And that did the trick with Juliet. So no big deal. And I'm like, okay, but right now we got to get some milk in this baby. So that's when I helped you set up the pump and start pumping. And I contacted Jeanette because I know that even if we get ties released, a lot of times there's, if the baby has only ever had a restricted range of motion for their tongue, sometimes they need a little bit of extra help to learn how to use it properly when they've, got that extra motion. And so there can be some exercises that can be done, et cetera, et cetera. So what I ended up doing was, and that's one of the benefits of home birth care, is that, I texted Jeanette on like her cell phone, like instantly. And because we have these connections, and I was like, can you see Alicia like ASAP? And she's like, yes, I can. And you were like, I'm on board, which is awesome. Because sometimes, parents are like, well, I don't know, and so you were on board. Jeanette was on board.
So hold on though. So Alicia, the first 2 babies had tongue ties, and it sounds like you didn't see an IBCLC with them, and things got all of a sudden better. You just had them. So what made you feel like this time you were willing to see me? And I think you had the ties released before you saw me. Isn't that right?
I did. Yep. I actually, I went back to the hospital lactation consultants like numerous times with my first, with Leia. And I probably didn't mention that. I'm sorry. I went dozens of times, and I was so desperate that I actually went to Haywood to see if they would see me, because I think there's like a big shift in the past like 8 years about, lactation consultants aren't in hospitals so much anymore. And you guys all know better than me about that.
It depends on the hospital, but yeah.
So this really amazing lactation consultant, Gail,
yes, I know.
saw me, and she is awesome. And she's like, this baby's not getting fed. And so she gave me formula, and she is like, you need to feed this baby, come back in 2 weeks. And she's like, and I looked up everything on the internet that you could do to increase your milk production, because and she told me, she was like, I think this is a tie, ask your pediatrician. If they give you a hard time, come back to me. Biggest regret in the whole world, because I did see my pediatrician. They said, there's barely anything here. It's not a big deal. If you do want surgery, then we will have to put your baby under. Now she was over 2 months at that time.
And this is the first baby or second that you're talking about right now?
The first.
Okay.
Yeah, which is all not true information, by the way.
No.
So, yeah, right.
I give you like the rough
Right.
story, but yeah, that's what happened. And then I really regret like not going back. Like I did go back to Yale for that reweigh and the second time, and she's like, I don't know what you did, but this baby is getting fed now. I did everything. I did like the oats. I did like the every galactolog that I could look up. I was having, I was drinking water, I was power pumping, I was doing all the things to make more milk. So I think whatever, like it was a uphill battle, but I think
Yeah.
that's why Leia did gain weight, and I think that's why the pediatricians didn't care. They're like, well, she's
Right.
gaining weight.
Right. So
We don't
often
care.
that's what's said.
Exactly. Like we don't care that she screams all day and all night, and we don't care that your boobs are falling off. Like,
Right. I mean, there are
Right.
so many warning signs. And for anybody who wants to learn more about tongue tie, we actually did an episode a couple episodes back with a fantastic lactation consultant from India who did a whole documentary on it called Untying Breastfeeding. But, you know, things like low milk supply and mastitis and plugged ducts and, you know, a baby who can't even take a bottle or dribbles out both sides of their mouths when they're trying to eat from breast or bottle, or, you know, screams all the time, is never satisfied, doesn't sleep well. Like these are all warning signs of some type of feeding issue. And so many pediatricians ignore all of it as long as the baby is getting fed. And they don't care if that baby's getting fed because you're pumping all hours of the day and you are dripping it into the baby's mouth and it's taking you hours and hours of time, or you're just giving the baby formula because that's all you can manage. It doesn't matter to them if your breastfeeding goals aren't being met.
Or if
They're
your
just like,
nipples are
well,
falling off,
if your nipples are
literally, like
falling
there's
off and they're
parts of your
torn to shreds,
yeah.
yeah, it's like, wow, we need to do better
Yeah.
for these families. These babies and these parents deserve better than, well, I mean, as long as you get something into the baby, that's all that matters. Like,
And a lot of people quit, and who can blame them? I mean, they're in pain,
exactly.
they're worried
Who
about their
can blame them?
babies. It's really difficult to pump around the clock, and you chose to keep doing that, and somehow, you know, with all the support you have around you, made it work.
Mhm.
But, you know, you struggled with the first one. The second one you got fixed sooner and things worked better because she was also a different baby. And then the
Yeah.
third one, your midwives say there might be a tongue tie, and you go and you chose a different, well, you went and got it released from a different person than the first one.
Yes.
But and then what was that? I'm so curious, like what made you feel like, well, maybe it won't get better right away and I'll go see Jeanette.
I was very persistent.
Okay.
I think that, I mean,
Yeah.
not to jump in, Alicia, but I remember, I remember her saying like, you know, well, I got it released with Juliet and everything immediately got better.
Right.
But you have been really good about educating me about how important the exercises are before and after. And so I think I really pushed hard for that.
Well, and the dentist,
because the baby
dentist
had
that you
lost a
ended up
lot of
going
weight.
to, the dentist you ended up going to with your third baby is also one who really recommends bodywork and IBCLC care. So
Yes.
that's helpful.
Yes, he insisted upon it. And I agreed. I was like, I'll do everything. I'll, you know, I'll walk around with a helmet made out of tinfoil if you want me to. It'll work. I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you, Dahlia was born on the 26th and I saw you on July 2nd. So you were very quickly.
Yes. And I think that's like definitely like a testament to the postpartum care. Like me and my husband are like, our minds are just blown with how amazing postpartum care is. Like I'm just like, my sister got married recently. I'm like, when you have a baby, I'm gonna postpartum care for you because this is insane. I wish I had this help with my first child. Like, is like the amount of education and care and individualized like is not out there for postpartum care usually. So I really wish I had that from the start. That's amazing.
I mean, I was there with her for over 2 hours.
Yeah.
I sterilized her pump. I literally held it to her body for her. She was exhausted. She hadn't slept in 3 days. I personally contacted a lactation consultant, got her an appointment. Her other midwife got her in with this pediatric dentist ASAP. So she facilitated that. She didn't, because she gave that dentist a heads up. I'm going to have a patient calling you. I need her to see right away. And then the midwife came back at a week. You, Jeanette, came, shortly before or after. And can you tell us a little bit about...
We did a virtual visit first.
Oh, that's right. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found in your appointment as far as the struggles of what Dahlia was going through? Because as we will learn, even when her ties were released, Dahlia still was struggling to get enough milk from your breast. So what was going on, Jeanette?
So she was still pinching. You felt like she was pinching, but then when we did a little work with the latch, which is so important, and I even find that sometimes when people think there might be ties, if we can fix the latch approach and how deep we can get the breast in the mouth and the positioning, sometimes it's like, well, maybe there's a frenulum under there that might be a little tight, but for the purposes of breastfeeding, you're fine, but you kept finding that it was, it was uncomfortable. It's hard to get her to latch. And let's see, I have my notes. Let's see. So that worked, and you were still trying to figure out how to get her to get the milk that you had. And you were also not making as much milk as you needed, right? So we went over the exercises to do and pumping and making sure that you were going to get some body work with a really great body worker. So let's see what else.
I definitely felt
Yeah, and she wasn't pooping enough either. So we're really trying to get her to transfer
That
enough
was the
milk.
other thing
Yeah.
too.
what was it? Yeah, she didn't poop for like a week.
And that is not normal.
Yeah, it was, the weight was kind of like, and then the poop was like, okay, something's definitely wrong. I remember now. Melissa was like, I'm sure it's fine, but like.
I know, like, not to be alarming or anything. I'm just going to call all these people and get you some appointments.
The bottle you were using was not optimal, and she also was sleeping and you were having a hard time waking her up. So she needed to gain, but you weren't able to wake her up too much either. And it was even hard for you to give her a bottle.
Yeah, she was very sleepy, which isn't that like a conundrum? Like you're like, oh, I found that sleepy baby, but also eat.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so like to speak to like the connectiveness of that postpartum care, like I felt like Beyonce. I really did. Like, I could get you in, and not only is it like, just any IBCLC, it's like Jeanette, who was like a podcast and groups, and I was like, she's the best. And you just like got me right in there. I felt like a VIP. I was like, oh, I should have done this 2 kids ago. That is for sure.
We need
you
a
are
better
VIP,
song.
Alicia. Yeah.
Instead of all the single ladies, all the new moms, all the new moms.
I love it. And so here you are, Alicia, like when all this is going on, you're barely a week postpartum, you're terribly sleep deprived, you're having to like set an alarm clock. Like you said, it's like this evil irony that your other baby would never sleep. And this one finally sleeps, but you have to set an alarm to wake yourself up, to force her to eat, to gain weight, you're having to pump and supplement your daughter with your express milk and also try to get her to latch. Can you talk a little bit about how did you manage it all? Like, how did you divide up that labor plus the labor of taking care of your other older children with your husband?
So I ignored them a lot. I neglected my children.
No, honestly, like that's part of it. Like giving people
yeah.
permission to be like, you don't have to be mom of the year to the oldest, doing arts and crafts right now. Like, it's dire straits.
There was lots of iPads. There was a lot of, I don't know, have a snack. Juliet at one point pulled like her little frozen couch into the postpartum room, and she just sat there on her iPad, and I was like, this is nice, thank you. Thank you for that. No, it was like we were sleeping through the alarms too. I had to set like 3 different back-to-back alarms, and it was
tired.
And I think I've heard the term triple feeding. I didn't hear that until recently, but that's what we were doing, and that took almost an hour and a half sometimes.
Yeah, where you're nursing, pumping, and bottle feeding.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. And so that would take like an hour once you're done washing everything, and then and then you have like what, like an hour to a half an hour to do it all over again. And it was like I was slammed, and I'm an older lady. I'm not a young 20-year-old.
But you're also a master delegator. I mean, you were in the military with working conditions that were absolutely not ideal. And you're a float pool tele med surge nurse, which I did that for a year and I literally cried every single day. Like, I am not exaggerating. That is no joke. You get floated to the busiest floor every night. You get the shittiest patients every night. And, because they're like, oh, just give that one to the float, And so you are a capable person, and that was still incredibly challenging. Like, I think we need to acknowledge like it, because sometimes when people are in that situation where even though it's temporary, they're like triple feeding, for example, they're like, I'm failing at this. There must be something wrong with me. It's like, no, this is like legit hard, like objectively challenging. And, it's not that you are not doing it right.
Yeah.
So like, did your husband like just take the older kids and you did did he do bottle feeds and you did breastfeeds? Like, who washed the bottle parts? Like, how did that work?
I think you just said it. Yeah, you just said exactly that.
That's what happened.
So we planned the vacation very strategically so that he had his 2 weeks vacation so that he was home for closer to a month, which was nice and very different than the last time.
Yeah.
Like right back to work, and I was like carrying this like big, and trying to drop layoff at soccer and bleeding more, and that's another thing that is not good. But so he was home more, so he took the kids out as much as he could. He was doing a lot of the bottle feeding so that I could pump while he fed her, which gave me like 15 more minutes of sleep, which was delightful. And then yeah, it was just really, I just remember just being completely defeated and tired. I was worried that like when we came to our first in-person appointment with Jeanette, that like I was like, oh wow, what's deodorant? And I hope she doesn't smell that. And at least
gosh,
masks. I was a mess, and completely a mess. And I remember in the appointment that and I just like, I feel like the first time everybody just kept telling me like, just nurse her, just keep nursing. But this time a lot of the care was focused on Dahlia being fed. And I appreciate that you guys are you're the actual profession, you're professional enough to know when a child needs to be fed versus just keep trying. And that's how I knew
just
I was
stick it out, it'll get better. Like, no, let's also
Exactly.
help her be healthy while you're figuring it out.
right.
And that's all, like, these people are educated, they're and that's when I felt like Beyonce. Like,
So I have two questions. So the first time that we met was virtual. So a lot of people feel like, oh, virtual, that's not the same. And there are people across the world who don't have access to in-person lactation right now during the pandemic. Some of us are doing that in Massachusetts, not a lot, but some people are just doing virtual. And at the time I was doing virtual, and then I started to do a little bit of in-person. But what was virtual like for you? Did you find that was helpful?
I thought it was really helpful. I mean, I think that like who you are as a IBCLC, I think you're very forward with educating. I think you're able to, you had your doll in one hand. You had your fake boob. I'm a very visual learner, so it completely worked for me.
Yeah.
I didn't need the tactile, like that was helpful, but yeah, like it was really helpful. Like what you taught me about pumping was next level, because I got like 2 to 3 more ounces each time after I realized I was like a 19 or 22 or something. But
just reached over, and those who are just listening aren't going to get the benefit of this unless you watch the show. But look what I just got. I have 2 different colors. It's amazing. It's a new breast, and it's the most real one I've ever had. It's so good.
I always say to Jeanette when she shows me new toys, I'm like, are you ever going to have enough fake breasts in your life? And she's like, no. There's always room for one more.
Boob mugs, boob shirts, everything. Give me more boobs. Yep. They all love it. Okay, so you had a virtual visit that you found helpful. Thank you for saying that. I try to do what I can to reach through the screen as much as I can to help
Great.
people.
I thought it was like, yeah, when you were like, well, I'm starting to see in person, I was like, virtual is fine because I thought it was like top of the top. And then we saw you in person and I learned even more. And my mind was constantly blown. I'm like, wow, because I'm a third time mom. I'm like, I
Right.
thought I knew everything. I thought I knew every page on kellymom.com
Right. Which is an
possible.
awesome website. Yeah.
I'm like, I've read everything. I've been in every Facebook group. I know everything. And I'm like, no, that's what motherhood does. Constantly reminds you, you know nothing.
Yeah.
Everything will change. And nothing is
Oh,
right.
preach it. Preach it. Yes.
That's so true. Jeanette held a pumping class for professionals. It was all about different types of pumping equipment and supplementing equipment. And she was like, hey, can you help me out? Like, you've got lactating breasts, and it would be great if you could like pump in front of this group of people. And me, not caring who sees my boobs, was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I like show up, with my lactating boobs and to her class. And I hook up to my pump and I'm showing these, nurses and doctors, like, what the pump does. And she goes, hey, this again, my third baby. She's like, hey, throw on these flanges, see what they do for you. And they were way smaller of a barrel than I had been using. I had been using a 24 millimeter, which the Spectra and the Medela
Right.
kind of come with this. And she gave me a 15 millimeter. And I was like, okay. So I like slap them on and it was crazy. Like it was like gushing out of me the milk and it was not painful. Whereas with the bigger barrel, it never was painful, but it always felt like this pinchy stinging that I just assumed was part of pumping. I couldn't even tell the flanges were on and I actually had to keep checking the suction. Like, so even as
You're
again,
like, it feels like nothing.
I pumped for 2 other babies for 2 years each, going back to work many, many days a week.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jeanette, you are always blowing my mind. Like, even so, there's always something to be. I wish more people would take advantage of your pumping consults, Jeanette,
Yeah.
because whether they're
Yeah.
going back to work or they're exclusively pumping or they just want to see if they can get more. I mean, it really makes a difference, the type of pump and the type of flange you use. But so
Mhm.
anyway, I digress, of course.
Yes.
But so
Back to the amazing Alicia.
did things get any better? Like with all of these things, because like you're feeling pretty defeated at this point, you're saying like it's
Big time.
weeks. And so did things get better? If so, when and how?
So I think like every meeting I saw Jeanette for, except for the virtual one, I cried, and I was very defeated because the plan was, and Jeanette is very clear, and I like that about you, very clear with the objective lines and exactly how everything's going to go, and the plan was always just to keep pumping, and then we'll get her back on, and I just like my brain, my sleep deprived brain could not comprehend that. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, I'm going to breastfeed this child. I need to breastfeed her. It's like, well, she's not getting enough milk, so you need to bottle feed her. And I'm like, no, I agree. I want my kid to live. So yes, I will be a bottle feeder.
Yes.
But
So just to interject though, so like our second visit, which was the first one in person, you were pumping 2.5 to 3 ounces when you would pump. And we did a before and after weight with Dahlia, and she didn't even get an ounce.
yeah, so that was a really good visual for me.
Yeah, it's like we want to get her there, but her mouth that has been, that her tongue has been released, her mouth had not yet managed to get to the point where it knew how to suckle well enough to get the milk that you actually had.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we needed to not only maintain what supply you had, but also increase it so that when she finally did catch up, that she could actually get that milk out of you. And I remember like you were, I don't understand, this is my third baby, And I didn't say it at the beginning of this, but just for the record, you did give me permission to talk about you today.
I relinquish.
She relinquished her right to privacy. But you know, like it's hard, and it's hard for lactation consultants to have to say that. Like I've seen it before, thank goodness. So I felt convicted that I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to get your child to be able to nurse and get that milk, but we want to increase your milk supply, and we still want to give her more body work with an excellent chiropractor, more tummy time, and figuring out which activities that you would do for her face and her mouth and her body that were going to help get her muscles of her face and mouth to work better. And that was just going to take time, and you did it.
I remember asking you, I'm like, okay, so like how long?
Yeah.
Like how long are we doing this for? I need to know. And I was like so fixated on how long. And then you told me, you said, listen, I think, was it 3 months that you got somebody to latch on for the first time?
5 months.
5 months. Oh, you told me 5 and I turned it into 3. I was that tired. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, at the end of that appointment, I remember
Now, just for the credit, I did not get that baby to latch on. The
Oh.
mother did.
Oh.
Yeah.
You were
But
she asked
meaning
me
you
to-
had a patient that had a baby that had never latched in 5 months, and then she decided to latch and the baby latched.
She latched in the hospital, hurt her mother, it doesn't matter whether it was boy or girl, but the baby hurt the mother. The mother said, I'm not doing that. I'd rather pump. She pumped, she made tons of milk. She calls me over, like baby's like a week old, help me with pumping. Don't even try to convince me to latch this baby on. I didn't even look in the baby's mouth. I have no idea. Like the baby's just asleep the whole time. She pumped well. I helped her with pumping. We're all good. And she said, I am not interested in breastfeeding. I said, that is totally fine. Whatever you want to do. 5 months in, she calls me and she goes, I just latched the baby on just for kicks and giggles, and it like didn't hurt. And I'm just like curious. And I don't think I'm gonna breastfeed the baby, but like maybe once a day. I don't know. I'm good with pumping, but can you just come and check? And so I came and checked, and the baby latched really well and transferred lots of milk. And she ended up messaging me when the baby was 16 months old, and she said, we're still going strong. And you were right, I breastfeed all the time now. And I think she ended up breastfeeding that baby more than 2 years, I want to say. So anyway, giving credit to the mother, it wasn't me, but what I'm saying is that I have seen babies who have gone a long time without nursing, and then they do. So in your case, it was only like a couple weeks by this point.
Right. So was it? Yeah, it was. Oh God, that whole time.
So that was mid-July.
I can't
So
even
she
talk.
was 3 weeks old, maybe.
Okay, so and I remember walking, and then I'm like, I can't like live, because when you're in the thick of it, it
Right.
feels like forever. It
Mhm.
feels like this is my life now. It is awful.
Yes.
I don't know when it's gonna stop. I was just constantly asking Jeanette, well, how long are we doing this for? And that's when I decided, when I was walking to the car, I said, I'm going to do this for 3 months. I'm going to triple feed for 3 months. I'm going to do whatever she needs. And something about having an end time, like a date, a goal, like I feel like I probably would have been fine if I said 8 weeks. Like I just needed to know that one day it would stop, because she was taking the bottle fine. She was doing okay with the formula. We were kind of mixing around because she wasn't pooping great still, I think that, and she started to have like this rash, and I was like, oh no, is that a formula thing? And so I think I was like, well, like if she likes it, then we'll give it, I had an end goal. Like my child at that time was being fed. And if I will pump exclusively as much as I can until 3 months. And I was supplementing with formula, ironically, until she started latching. Then that's when I pumped enough for every feed.
So you decided, okay, I am going to just do this for 3 months.
Yeah.
And so what happened?
So magically, she just eventually started, she really took to the feed. She started to gain weight. And then so around 8 weeks, I believe, I could be wrong. It felt like 8 weeks. I started to latch her. I saw Jeanette again, and then I was given the blessing to give her an ounce and then latch her on, and then see how she does. She didn't when we did that, she she actually really just liked to have the bottle. So I had trouble with that. So there was a couple times that I like started to nurse her and I was like, wow, this feels different. We did side lying and I'm like, wow, she looks like she's doing great. I like Googled all the signs of like a fed baby, because why would a mother of three know what that looks like? I get in this state where you just don't trust yourself or
Yeah.
anything. And that's the thing with the providers, like, and unfortunate information. And that was like with my first kid, like I knew something was wrong. And
Mhm.
even my husband was like, you know, like the doctors keep telling us everything's fine. And I'm like, I think he thought I was crazy. And he eventually apologized to me. He was like, oh,
Good.
you were right.
Yeah.
Something was wrong. And I'm like, and he, you know, hopefully hasn't doubted me since. But but that's the thing, like I didn't, and I've mentioned this to Jeanette before, I call them mommy pants. Like, yeah, I didn't get my mommy pants on and really like put my foot down. And I should have gone back to Gail for Leia, and she probably would have hooked me up with Dr. Cutlow anyways, but I didn't because I was told it was fine. And then, so to go back to this story, what I said, I will give it 3 months. I can do this for 3 months. And then I started to feel very empowered. I didn't feel stupid anymore. I didn't feel like I had no idea what was going on. So I was nursing her. And then like, so I did feel that time because I Googled it, but but I was, and I'm like, wow, I really feel like she's being fed. And then I'm like nursing her more and nursing her more, and we're still with the bottles. And then like all of a sudden the bottles are only at night. And then I'm nursing her more, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like it's happening.
Mhm.
She learned how to do it. Like she's eating, and it just blew my mind. I was like, holy crap, what if I quit like literally a day before she started to nurse?
Mm.
Like I'm not like, if it's not working for like for you, like stop. Like, but I gave myself a time limit
Mhm.
to call it, to just wait and to call it then. And that like was what I needed to
Yeah.
keep going. And I would say for like anybody who's like struggling, just give yourself a limit, like whether it be tomorrow or like a year, I don't know, but just pick a day and like have a plan and hang in there. And I swear you'll feel like 500 times more sane.
Or
It was,
even, you know, I mean, one thing was that we also looked at different bottles and made sure that the bottle was right for her mouth and that it was supportive. But it's also not just setting like 3 months at the outset. You can also set like, okay, by the end of the week, I'm going to reevaluate.
okay, yeah.
And if
Right,
things are
sure.
getting slightly better, or if I still feel like I'm willing to give it another week, then let's go another week.
Yeah.
And it's also really valid to say, I'm even going to go feeding by feeding, not necessarily that you're going to
Yeah.
make a decision to quit in a crisis, because that's never good to do in life typically. But it's more about, do I feel like nursing this baby right now? Nope. So don't.
Yeah.
Bottle feed.
Right.
Do you feel like doing it? No. But if you're like, I'm pretty awake. All right, I'm ready. I got the wherewithal. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try. Then you try. But if you're like, there's no way I'm gonna put this baby on my breast for the next 2 weeks, I can't even imagine it. I'd rather pump, then just pump. And
Yes.
then when you feel better, then we'll work on getting the baby back to the breast.
Right. I think
Absolutely.
that's especially important with people who've had a lot of nipple damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes they're getting this advice to, just power through. And no, that just makes them hate it and hate the
Mm-hmm.
baby. And they don't hate the baby,
Mm.
but like their body's telling them this baby is hurting you
Yes.
and you
Yes.
hate this, And so I think the whole key of it is you can do any of the above as long as you're getting the right support from a knowledgeable IBCLC, right? Because that person, even if you have to take 2 weeks off for your sanity or 2 weeks off latching for your breasts to heal or whatever, that lactation consultant is going to be able to help you, keep up the skills that you and the baby are going to need to reunite and restart or continue that breastfeeding relationship. Like that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with the time limits. I think that it is, whatever you're quitting, right? Let's say you're quitting cigarettes and it's like people will be like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just want a cigarette now. Okay, you know what? If I still feel like this tomorrow, I'll smoke then. Right. And then tomorrow's a new day and maybe it's not as stressful and you do right. So I feel like these even little time limits are so important. And I try to remind that to clients all the time that, triple feeding is really hard, but it will not be like this forever.
Yeah.
Whether the baby and you improve and everything gets better and you can just resume a breast or chest feeding relationship, or at some point you just make a different choice. Like that is okay. But if right now you're telling me your goal is to make milk for your baby and possibly latch them one day, this is what I can help you with.
Yeah.
And it's hard and we'll try to figure out how we can support you through it. But it's okay to like set these limits and be like, this is hard, but like you said, I can do this for 3 months. That was what you had, the time limit you had chose because it felt doable to you.
Yes.
And I think that's what's important. What feels doable to you? Okay. If you're thinking, I can't do this for a year, you don't have to. If you're thinking, I can't breastfeed when I go back to work, you don't have to think about that right now. Can you do this right now? Can you do this for this feeding? Can you do this for today? Heck, I didn't have a baby with tie issues and damaged nipples. I was just in the thick of newborn hell with my first. And I called Jeanette, who was my doula at the time, and in tears saying, I thought I was going to do this for a year. I will not make it 6 days. I was bawling my eyes out. Like, and she was like, you don't have to make it a year. You just have to make it today. And I'm like, okay, I'll make it today. And then I'll make it the next day. And I'll make it the next day. So
The other
that
thing
is
that you
really
did, Alicia, was that you not only saw me virtually and then in person, you saw me again. And you not, I see this too often, unfortunately. This, for example, this triple feeding, where triple feeding is hard. And so people will do it. And I say, this is not permanent. I want you to do this for like 5 days, maybe 7. You're going to keep in touch with me. And then we're going to have another appointment and we're going to reassess. Right. And then I don't hear from them.
right.
Or I get a couple text messages, but there's no appointment. And then finally, weeks and weeks and weeks later, now they're like at week 11. And then maybe I see them and I'm like, oh my goodness, if I could have just seen you so long ago, where'd you go? Like you suffered all this time. The goal was not for you to triple feed for all this time, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
good for you. Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You told me what to do and I did it. This is the pro. I'll do anything you tell me to do because and it's a testament that it works. And I just remember like you comforting me on the couch, and I'm like trying to keep the tears in my eyes because I'm like, this is embarrassing. And like, like it's in the middle of COVID, like don't cry, that's bad for you. Eye droplets will get everywhere, all over your
Oh, let the tears fall. It's the cathartic.
I couldn't believe it, but hearing like like the dates, like being able to be like, okay, this is manageable for this amount of time. And not only that, hearing that somebody can just latch at 5 months, like I needed to hear that it was possible because my brain could not comprehend that I could bottle feed a kid and then still breastfeed them. Like, and you kept telling me that you said it like 100 times and I was still not understanding it. And I needed to hear it 100 times though.
Yeah.
That's how many times I needed to hear it. And then just having that date, it like really messed me up because I was like, oh my gosh, how many other things in my life should I set a day for? Like, maybe I should, like eat better or like exercising for one day, I got to start working this around my whole life. I'll probably be in.
Well, you just said that you'll do anything I tell you to. So exercise and eat right.
Oh, that was free.
So there's a saying in the like Alcoholics Anonymous kind of like support network of things that says it works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it. And I think that that's we got to get a little phrase like that, Jeanette, for like, listen, this advice, it works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it and your baby's worth it and you want this, So I'm sure there people in your situation, I don't know if this happened to you, but I know it happens to others, where when they see you struggling, and God forbid you complain about how hard it is, they just say, well, why are you making it so hard for yourself? Just feed the baby formula, right? So now that you are 7 months in, Your beautiful daughter is thriving on breast milk. And you have a breastfeeding relationship, which was your goal. What are some of the best things about breastfeeding your daughter, especially since she's the youngest of 3 children?
Well, I would say the hardest thing about not breastfeeding her was washing those bottles. And I actually had like a patient, and the CNA was in there, and the aide's sister just had a baby, and she said, well, she's trying hard to breastfeed, and they were both like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then I was like, well, I breastfeed because I'm lazy. In the middle of the night, I just want to pop my boob out and not have to like be awake or, like aware of things and running downstairs and cleaning things and doing
Yeah.
math, like
Right, doing math. That's such a good point.
I was like, wait, hold on. How many scoops did I just put in here?
Yeah.
And
What does that line say? They don't make those bottles easy to read most of the time either.
No, they don't.
And then they're like, wait, what was this, a 4-ounce one or was this a 2? How much did she have? Like it's hard. And just for me, convenience as well as antibodies in a pandemic. I just really appreciate those things. I'm still working at the hospital. I worked at a COVID for the past 2 nights.
Wow.
Like I feel confident coming home knowing that my daughter's breastfed right now, and I appreciate that. I was able to do that through like the blood, sweat, and tears, and so many tears. And I really attribute it to having a goal date. And as silly and as often as you hear something like that, like that's just when I felt everything change.
It's amazing. You worked hard. You worked very hard.
You worked so hard, and your baby will.
Awesome.
I always tell people they'll never be able to tell you, but they appreciate it.
I always say that there's ways, sometimes you have to like grab a picture of your baby nursing and get a good picture of you nursing together, and then include that in the wedding slideshow. And then give a speech. I breastfed you through all this trouble.
My mom, she told me when we were having all the trouble with, like, I love my mom, she's amazing, but she was like, oh, I never had trouble breastfeeding you. And I was like, I never had trouble eating. It was me. I ate fine.
Amen. It's not always the mom's fault.
Right.
Thank you. So do you have any advice for other parents going through these similar types of really tough struggles in those really vulnerable early weeks of new parenthood?
Yeah, I would say don't I feel like as a parent, I should know not to have expectations, but I did. I had expectations. I had like outfits picked out. I thought we were going to like have this summer. We were going to be on the beach with the baby with a little bonnet under an umbrella, and I'd be like magically 90 pounds. I don't know. I had these dreams.
I had dreams.
So many dreams. I thought that's how it was, because my second was a very easy baby, and we did have a very wonderful time, and I thought it was going to be exactly that. So my advice is not to have expectations that you can't have a curveball. Be prepared as much as you like, don't expect that you know everything. And then I would say the best thing that I was able to do was like really tap into this like resource mafia that you guys have.
Oh gosh.
Oh my God, I love it. That's a new hashtag for me. Right? I'm gonna get a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Resource mafia.
And the other one was mommy pants. Put on your mommy pants. I wrote that down last time I saw you.
You guys are like so connected. Like if you just have like a list of like these resources and these professionals that are like, you guys are not only amazing, compassionate, like, caregivers, but you really know your crap. You're like,
we gotta have you on more often.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, just have your resources ready, have no expectations, and set it. If it's really crappy and it's really terrible, pick a day and say, I can last until that day, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, like when your baby's 3 months, like just have a plan. And then I assure you that you will feel like it's possible and that you can stay sane.
Yeah.
Awesome. so much. Thank you so much for coming on our show and like being so
thanks for
open about your
sharing.
experience. Yeah.
Thank you
I
for
think
having
You're
that
me.
making it so fun.
I know we got to have you on again because we've bonded in so many ways, Alicia. It was one of my favorite parts of taking care of you because my third baby was also a major curveball, and I had a very easy second baby. I thought it was going to be puppet dogs and rainbows after Marcy, and it was not. She threw me for a loop. So you're not alone in that. You are an incredibly strong, determined, hardworking, and compassionate woman. And we are lucky to know you and have you as a friend. You are also a gift to your family and friends. And so thank you for sharing your story and for doing the work that you do. It's been awesome to talk with you and catch up with you.
Thank you so much
Awesome.
for having me. You've made all my dreams come true.
Well, I want you to message me in 20 years after you show this to your girls and tell me what they think of your story with them.
Okay, absolutely. It's our virtual watch party.
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. All right, awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's show and we hope you'll tune in again. And remember, Babies in Common is a community for you. After all, we all have babies in common. Awesome.